They are dismantling the sleeping middle class.
Not again.
We cannot break their signal. Our transmitter is not powerful.
What's your problem?
Can you believe it? She didn't even go to Lamar's class.
You're okay. This one, real ugly.
Forced by the sudden economic collapse that dries up work opportunities in Denver, Colorado, a construction worker named John Nada packs up his life and his tools in a single bag, leaves everything he ever knew behind, and heads to Los Angeles in hopes of finding a job, starting over, and building a better life for himself. As soon as he arrives in Los Angeles, John goes to the employment office, shares his background in detail, and asks for a job, but is disappointed to learn that there are no available work opportunities for him. John leaves the office and, determined to find his own way, walks around the city looking for any available work. After hours of walking, John reaches a park, sees a group of people surrounding a preacher, and slowly approaches them to find out what has them so completely mesmerized. Then, John hears the preacher, who so convincingly announces that they have taken the hearts and minds of the world's leaders, blinded humanity to the true human spirit, and corrupted them with greed. As the bewildered crowd starts to look at one another, trying to understand the seemingly encrypted message, the preacher urges everyone to wake up and see the masters lurking among them. However, a few minutes later, John notices the police arriving to disperse the crowd, walks away completely perplexed about who the preacher was talking about, and wonders whether there's any truth to it, or if it was just a crooked reality cooked up in the mind of a conspiracy theorist. Unable to figure it out, John pushes these thoughts aside and continues on his way. As it gets darker, John looks for a place to spend the night, finds an alley filled with homeless people, and quietly takes a corner, where he quickly drifts off to sleep. The next morning, John continues his job search and, after hours of wandering around, is relieved to find one at a construction site. There, John spends the whole day working hard and is later disappointed to learn that he will get paid at the end of the week, once again leaving him with nowhere to go. Then, as he contemplates his next move, seemingly reading his mind, his boss warns him that he can't spend the night on site and walks away annoyed at having to remind him in the first place. Luckily, moments later, a fellow construction worker named Frank Armitage, who has recognized John's desperation, approaches him, introduces himself, and tells him that he lives in a shanty town called Justiceville near a local church, which offers free food and shelter, and offers to take him there. After some hesitation, John takes the offer and the duo walks there. In Justiceville, Frank introduces John to the community leader Gilbert, who welcomes him politely and helps him get settled. A few minutes later, while the duo enjoys a meal, Frank shares that he was forced to leave his wife and young son in his hometown, Detroit, due to the sudden economic collapse that bankrupted numerous factories and cost him his job, and adds that after traveling through states searching for work, he had arrived in Los Angeles a few months back. Seemingly emotional about the nostalgic memories of his beloved family, Frank then blames the economic collapse that ruined the lives of the working class on the greed of the wealthy, and complains about how unfair life always only works out for the rich. After quietly listening to his new friend, to the surprise of Frank, John shares his optimistic view that he believes that no matter how unlikely it seems, hard work will pay off eventually, and adds that they should patiently wait until such a time comes. That evening, while a group of people gather around and watch TV, a mysterious warning from a hacker interrupts their program.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness. The movement was begun 8 months ago by a small group of scientists who...
It's giving me a headache.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. They are safe as long as they are not discovered.
While watching the ominous message, a confused John notices the preacher from earlier, standing across the street and mouthing the same exact words as the hacker, which piques his curiosity. The hacker announces that they have created a repressive society whose consciousness has been destroyed and lulled into a trance, making it an unwitting accomplice. The hacker then adds that they are safe as long as they are not discovered, and their primary method of survival is to keep humanity asleep, selfish, and focused on its temporary gains. Having heard about them for a second time in 2 days, John begins to realize that the ominous message might not just be a figment of imagination. Unfortunately, before John can finish listening to the hacker, the group of people who clearly take the warning to be some kind of fake ploy to scare them change the channel and peacefully continue watching their favorite show. Meanwhile, as John remains frozen in place, still reflecting on what he heard, he sees Gilbert rushing over to the preacher and arguing with him. Then, after scanning his surroundings to make sure no one is watching, Gilbert escorts the preacher to the church, where they remain for the rest of the night. The next morning, John runs into Gilbert and, having heard the church choir singing all night, asks him what the choir is preparing all night for. Clearly annoyed by the question, Gilbert gives him a vague, defensive answer and rushes away, which raises John's curiosity further. Then, moments later, while a group of people enjoys their regular morning show, another ominous message from the hacker appears.
Not again.
Cannot break their signal. The signal must be shut off at the source.
Can somebody please explain to me what the hell that's all about?
Just that idiot licking his nuts again.
They are dismantling the sleeping middle class.
Despite being confused by what they see, the group dismisses it once again, proceeds to change the channel, and continues watching their regular show while Gilbert inconspicuously rushes off to the church. Seeing this from a distance, John discreetly follows him there and is surprised to find an eerie message that says, "They live, we sleep," written across the walls. Once again wondering what this means and who they are, John discreetly inspects what's going on, notices that the choir song heard is a recording and is used to obscure a meeting between Gilbert and the hacker. While carefully inspecting the seemingly curious items, including dark sunglasses laid out on a table in front of him, John quietly listens to the discussion in which the duo discuss that since they will keep jamming the signal, strong people need to join the movement to make effective progress. Then, John accidentally discovers a hidden room full of cardboard boxes, and before he can learn more about it, the preacher appears out of nowhere and questions him. As a shocked John mumbles that he was just visiting the church and desperately hopes that the preacher will believe him. He's amused to see the preacher change his tone within a few seconds, drop his interrogation, and offer to show him the revolution. Still shaken up by the encounter, John promises to join the preacher some other time and rushes out. A few minutes later, helicopters start circling the area, and as John watches on from a distance, Gilbert and the hacker quickly start carrying out cardboard boxes to a car and speed away. As John continues observing the chaotic movement around the church, Frank approaches him and, as if he's reading his mind, advises him to mind his own business and stay out of matters that don't concern him directly. That night, the police suddenly raid Justiceville and the church, causing absolute mayhem and destruction, and forcing everyone to start running in every direction, desperately hoping to avoid capture. As John runs away to a dark alley, he's shocked to see the hacker and the preacher, who have been singled out and pulled aside, being attacked by the police. And as he tries to come up with a way to help them, he is more perplexed to hear the preacher tell the police that he knows what they are. As the altercation escalates, John proceeds to flee the area, runs into a terrified man, helps him up, and the duo hides in an abandoned building nearby and manages to survive the chaos. However, unable to fall asleep, John spends the whole night reflecting on what he heard and everything that happened, but fails to find an answer as to what prompted such a violent raid on a group of helpless people and a church. The next morning, while everyone returns to Justiceville and tries to recover what's left of their belongings, John goes to the church and finds it completely damaged and thrashed. He then cautiously looks around inside, is relieved to learn that the secret room remains hidden, and, convinced that whatever is inside the boxes is the key to finding out what's going on, takes a box and discreetly heads to a hidden alley. There, John inspects the contents of the box, is quite surprised to find it filled with dark glasses, takes a pair, hides the box in a trash can, and heads to the city. There, after making sure no one is watching, John subtly puts on the glasses and is left utterly stunned as the world around him suddenly transforms into black and white. To his horror, the ordinary advertisements and billboards that moments earlier seemed completely harmless and even quite tempting now reveal disturbing subliminal commands to obey and conform, which leave him horrified and confused out of his mind. This is terrifying. To make matters worse, John is soon terrified to see a man who, through the glasses, is revealed to be a grotesque, bug-eyed creature. Doubting his eyes, just like he had done with the billboards, John proceeds to test what he sees. He takes off the glasses to see an ordinary-looking man, but is once again taken aback to see the terrifying creature as soon as he puts them back on. Desperately trying to understand what he's seeing, John continues walking around with the glasses on and notices a few more creatures hidden behind perfectly natural-looking human facades. Struggling to quiet down the seemingly endless questions in his head, John resumes inspecting his surroundings carefully and is quite perplexed by how well the creatures have managed to assimilate with humans and seamlessly carry out routine, harmless interactions with the clueless people. After a couple of hours wandering around in utter shock and terror, John heads into a supermarket where he sees one of the creatures giving a speech on TV. Wondering how far the ordeal goes, John suddenly works out that the creatures must somehow be related to what both the hacker and the preacher were talking about. While distracted by this terrifying thought and trying to remember what he had heard as much as he can, John bumps into a creature disguised as an old woman who quickly apologizes.
You know, you look like your head fell in the cheese dip back in 1957.
Oh.
You see, I take these glasses off. She looks like a regular person, doesn't she, huh?
He's a tall, Caucasian male that doesn't appear armed, wearing sunglasses.
I wish you kept this to yourself, John. Terrified by what he sees, John rushes out and is soon chased by two creatures working as police officers who question him about where he got the special glasses that have suddenly revealed the truth they have been trying to hide. Seeing John's refusal to answer their question, the officers quickly change their tone, inform him that they can all benefit from his discovery of the truth, and ask to take him to a more secluded place to work out a deal. Outraged by the offer, John refuses to engage, beats up the officers, fatally shoots them, and is amused to see that they are just as mortal as humans are. John then quickly steals their weapons, and as more police cars start arriving, flees the area. Then, hoping to find somewhere to hide, John barges into a bank where he sees more creatures, both as part of the bank employees and as customers. Instinctively, John starts shooting at the creatures, who quickly alert one another about his presence through their wristwatch device. Moments later, just as he proceeds to kill a creature, John is shocked to see him disappear into thin air and realize that, on top of everything else, they have the ability to teleport. As the chaos in the bank mounts and police speed to the area, John sneaks out of the back door into a quiet alley. There, just as he tries to catch his breath, John sees a mysterious drone surveilling him and shoots it down. Moments later, a human police officer arrives, and as he proceeds to approach John with his weapon drawn, John calmly disarms him, and once he confirms that he is human, spares his life, and orders him to leave. Then, as the police start flooding the area and surrounding it, John hides in the underground parking lot of the building, where he abducts a human woman named Holly Thompson and forces her to give him a ride at gunpoint. While John hides in the car, a terrified Holly drives him away from the chaos. After clearing the immediate danger, John forces Holly to drive him to her place, where he hopes to lie low until he figures out how to proceed. Terrified for her life, Holly does as ordered, and once they get to her fancy house, John breathes a sigh of relief and calms down. Then, determined to get Holly to see the truth, John shares all the terrifying things he had discovered in the last few hours and urges Holly to put on the glasses. However, Holly refuses to do so, reasoning that since she's terrified out of her mind, she won't logically analyze what she sees and will find whatever he wants her to. Exhausted by the whole ordeal, John drops the subject, and while he works out his next move in the back of his mind, tries to get to know Holly and is surprised to learn that Holly is the assistant program director of the famous TV channel Cable 54. Recalling all the ominous messages that were transmitted on the channel in the last 2 days, John rushes to turn on the TV and ask her all about it. But before he can even finish his sentence, Holly takes advantage of his distraction, reacts quickly, and throws him out of her glass window. She then calls the police, and as she gives them details of the ordeal, she notices that John had left his special glasses behind. Quite shocked by this, John tries to gather himself, and as he hears the police sirens approaching, despite being terribly exhausted, John summons all his strength to flee the area. In the next few hours, John tries to get as far away as he can from Holly's place, and when he can no longer go on, takes some rest for the night. The next morning, John wakes up early, walks back to the construction site, and arrives there a few hours later. Once there, John discreetly sneaks inside and tries to pull Frank aside and tell him everything that happened. However, as soon as he sees John, Terrified by news of John's killing spree, which has made headlines, Frank freaks out, tells him that he has to focus on his work for the sake of his family, informs him that he wants nothing to do with him, and orders him to leave. Disappointed and feeling lonely and burdened by the terrifying discovery, John starts walking to the alley where he had hidden the box, but becomes more distressed as he sees his face plastered all over the city, labeled as a wanted murderer. Luckily, John safely finds his way to the alley, but is terrified to see that the box is no longer in the trash can where he had put it. Luckily, John sees the garbage truck, which has just emptied the trash cans and manages to rescue the box of special glasses. Moments later, just as John proceeds to leave with a glass, Frank arrives to give him his paycheck. As soon as he sees him, John quickly puts on the glasses, is relieved to see that his new friend is human, hence asks him to put on the glasses, and is annoyed when Frank refuses. Determined to show Frank the terrifying reality, John urges him to reconsider, and soon a fight ensues between the duo. After a lengthy and brutal fight, John momentarily subdues Frank and forces him to wear the glasses, which shakes him to his core. As Frank tries to make sense of what he just saw, a drone suddenly appears out of nowhere, forcing them to hide. Later, the duo, who are completely exhausted and banged up, decide to hide at a local motel, put their glasses on, and carefully head there. Once inside, Frank rushes to the windows as if to double-check what he had already seen. Once again becomes horrified by the eerie messages he sees on billboards, and still perplexed, bombards John with endless questions about the identity of the creatures, their goal, and how long they have existed among them. Exasperated by this and hoping to calm his friend down, John tells Frank everything he knows, which isn't much, and the duo agrees to find the people who had made the glasses so that they can find out as much as they can about the creatures. That night, as they rest at the motel, John and Frank discuss different theories as to the origin of the creatures, but get nowhere. Then, after reflecting on the ominous warnings he had heard, John promises that he will make the creatures pay and won't let them get away with anything. A couple of days later, Gilbert, who unbeknownst to the duo has been leading the resistance movement against the creatures, tracks down Frank, who is relieved to see him and takes him back to the motel. Once safely behind locked doors, Gilbert, who's happy to have both Frank and John on board, informs them of a discreet meeting scheduled for that night, gives them the address, and warns them to head there cautiously and make sure no one follows them. Relieved to find an ally, Frank and John take many detours on their way to the meeting to make sure no one can track them and arrive at the meeting hall. Once there, a woman from Justiceville warmly welcomes the duo, assures them that everyone there is human, and gives them more efficient contact lenses in place of the glasses, which attract unwanted attention and can place them in danger. Moments later, Frank and John are shocked to learn that TV signals that have the ability to keep humanity in a blissful trance are continuously broadcast by the creatures 24/7, even when TV sets are turned off. Before they can process this and understand the implications, the duo are also informed that the creatures have come from a different planet, are changing the Earth's climate to replicate that of their home planet while robbing it of its valuable natural resources, and once it depletes, will move on to their next victim. Quite shocked by this revelation and realizing that the unprecedented situation is far more complex and dangerous than they first thought, Frank and John quietly try to process everything. But they are soon interrupted by Gilbert, who warmly greets them and bombards them with questions to make sure that they haven't been followed. Once the duo assures him that there's nothing to worry about, Gilbert shares that the police, who have been informed that a group of communists is planning to take down the government, have been searching for them vigorously, and hence warns that they must remain on high alert at all times. Gilbert also adds that the aliens, who have identified humanity's greed as soon as they arrived, have been offering endless wealth and power to humans who will join their cause, and have successfully recruited many, including the world leaders, to collaborate with them on their mission. Then, after explaining that they need an assault team to fight with both the aliens and their human collaborators, Gilbert reveals their small collection of weapons and introduces Frank and John to the weapons expert. The expert then shows them all of their weapons quickly, before eagerly handing Frank an alien wristwatch, which is used as a two-way radio communication device, and advises him to listen to their secret broadcast. He then adds that the wristwatch also enables its owner to teleport to any location, and advises him to always keep it close by, as it might come in handy during these uncertain times. Then, Gilbert addresses the members of the resistance, shares his disappointment at their failure to recruit more people to their cause, and reminds them how outnumbered they are against the aliens who seemingly manage to strengthen their hold every minute. He then informs the group that the aliens' detection system is growing, and hence advises them to keep their resistance movement a secret and maintain their normal daily routines like going to work and socializing with them to throw them off. However, tired of living in fear and being undermined on their own turf, some members speak out against this strategy and urge Gilbert to lead them to war against the aliens. Despite understanding the frustration, Gilbert, who knows that they won't win such a war without further preparation and recruitment, calms them down, begs them to be patient, and announces that the only way they can manage to defeat the aliens is by working discreetly, infiltrating them as collaborators, and spy on them from inside to find the location of the powerful signal source and shut it off. Then, as everyone starts sharing their suspicions about the location of this signal, Holly informs them that most of the mentioned addresses have been cleared as false leads, and hence they must continue searching for more information. From the other side of the room, John, who stands at the back with Frank, intently following the discussion, is delighted to see Holly as part of the resistance movement and quickly approaches her. "Didn't she throw you out of a window, John?" Before John can even say a word, Holly, who's seemingly delighted to see John has survived her attack, frantically apologizes for what happened in their last encounter, revealing that she has since found out the truth and joined the resistance. However, moments later, before the duo can even finish their conversation, to the sheer terror of everyone, the police show up out of nowhere, blast their way inside, and cause utter mayhem. Despite the unexpected horror, the group tries to fight back as much as they can, but many are killed in cold blood, including Gilbert. As the officers continue their brutal attack, many, including Holly, scatter, run for their lives, and flee the area. Meanwhile, on the other side of the chaos, conveniently armed at the time of the ambush, Frank and John fight back and manage to kill numerous officers until they are cornered. Luckily, Frank accidentally activates a mysterious portal using the wristwatch, and after convincing John, who tries to risk his life to search for Holly, to remain hidden, the duo quickly jump in to escape the immediate danger. Once there, the duo is informed that they can find instructions in multiple languages and are advised to find their own way. Hence, they quietly roam around the empty corridors while evading notice, and soon are shocked to hear a couple of guards celebrating the successful police raid of the resistance group, which they refer to as terrorists. A few minutes later, the duo finds a room full of impeccably dressed people attending a lavish party and quietly steps inside to find out the cause of the celebration. As soon as they do, Frank and John are shocked to their core to see an alien thanking the collaborators for giving them access to Earth's resources, along with their unwavering support and help to exceed their goals in the past year, and reminding them how much they all profited in exchange for their help. He then announces that according to their projections, the whole planet will be under the allied power of the visitors by 2025. As the seemingly clueless people cheer and celebrate this news, the speaker interrupts his speech to listen to an incoming message and ecstatically informs the audience that their troops have managed to destroy the resistance movement and congratulates everyone on the incredible feat. As the duo remains frozen with shock and desperately tries to process what they hear, a well-dressed man who was once a drifter in Justiceville recognizes them, warmly greets them, and, mistaking them for recruits, congratulates them on joining the winning side before offering to show them around. Hoping to learn as much as they can, the duo agrees and joins the drifter, who first takes them to a mysterious transmission site where they see a few aliens teleporting back to their home planet. Then, seeing the duo's fascination, the drifter proudly shares what little he knows about the mechanism of the travel and tries to impress them by informing them that their advanced system allows passengers to teleport across different worlds. Left speechless, the duo remain quiet and follow the drifter, who promises to show them the center of the whole facility and takes them to the studio of Cable 52, from which the powerful signal that has seemingly blinded humanity to the truth is transmitted to the satellite. The satellite then sends out these mysterious signals and traps people in an endless trance. The drifter then announces that this is as far as he can take them, and once again marvels at the greatness of the advancement he has recently discovered. Unfazed by this, John asks the drifter to take them inside the soundproof studio so that they can see the filming up close, but they are soon stopped by the alien guards who demand to see their authorization card. Feeling cornered, John and Frank fatally shoot the guards, hold the drifter at gunpoint, and order him to find a way to get them inside. After learning from the drifter that the satellite signal originates on the roof, the duo prepares to head up there. And recognizing the studio as Holly's place of employment, John discusses with Frank and proposes that they should first find and rescue Holly, who can give them access to the roof so that they can destroy the signal for good. The terrified drifter eavesdrops on the duo's conversation, and just as they proceed to leave, he stops them and begs them not to go through with their plan. As the annoyed duo proceeds to attack him, the drifter stands his ground, explains that it's just a business deal for him, and, after reminding them of all the hardships they went through as homeless people, urges them to join his side and enjoy the incredible luxury that comes with it. Seeing that both John and Frank are not the least bit interested in his proposal and remain determined to fight until the end, the drifter informs them that there will no longer be countries in the near future and the whole world will fall under the control of the visitors, and hence, once again, pleads with them to become collaborators before it's too late. A few minutes later, a couple of guards arrive, and as they proceed to open fire, Frank and John defend themselves and kill them. During this distraction, the drifter activates his wristwatch and teleports elsewhere, which annoys the duo. As they proceed to leave, Frank uses a grenade, which explodes and causes chaos in the studio. Seeing this, everyone realizes that there are trespassers on the premises, and guards are sent in every direction to find and kill those responsible for the chaos. Despite the lengthy and intense chase that ensues, Frank and John manage to kill many aliens while carefully sparing the lives of collaborators. A few minutes later, as the duo continues fighting for their lives, they are relieved to find Holly, who quickly joins them and gives them directions to the roof. As they proceed to walk up the stairs, while Holly and Frank remain behind, John engages in a shootout with some guards and makes it to the roof, where he's delighted to find the satellite. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to John, Holly suddenly reveals herself to be a collaborator who has infiltrated the resistance movement to spy on them, shoots Frank in the head, kills him, and rushes to the roof to find John and stop him before he destroys the signal. I didn't see this coming. A few minutes later, just as John proceeds to shoot and destroy the satellite, Holly walks up behind him, holds him at gunpoint, and orders him to step away from the satellite. Shocked by the unexpected turn of events, John does as ordered, and soon notices police officers surrounding the building in helicopters, giving him more orders to stand down. In a desperate moment of reflection, John considers his predicament and realizes that despite the dangers, he has the responsibility to safeguard the future of the Earth and humanity and rescue them from the doom designed by the aliens. John then decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, kills Holly using his hidden gun, and rushes to the satellite. Then, he quickly shoots and destroys the signal, but is soon fatally shot by the officers hovering over the building in helicopters. As he lies on the ground, struggling to breathe, John taunts the frantic officers, who panic, realizing what had just occurred. Then, moments later, knowing that he has successfully managed to secure a future for his kind, John dies with a smile on his face. From a homeless drifter to a hero, well done, John. Meanwhile, elsewhere, as the signal abruptly stops, humans around the world suddenly wake up from the trance and are shocked and disgusted to their core to finally see the true nature of the aliens, who had successfully managed to blend in among them for so long, along with the disturbing subliminal messages.